Your character is trying to help her grieving daughter. You're talking about spiritual alignment and giving all kinds of advice to her. What aspects of Gloria did you really want to explore in this role?
Well, I found the script very compelling because it's a psychological thriller that explores dreams and the subconscious, and so the idea of, what's real really appealed to me. And what's that thing they say about the truth? There's your truth, my truth, and then there's what is. And this film is exploring that blurred line that is incomprehensible. The thing about my character was I saw that there was an arc that, she starts out saying to her daughter, it's all in your head, but ends up saying he's going to haunt you no matter what. So she, kind of accesses her new age, the mother accesses kind of new age thinking to solve the mystery of it, but does come around to there's something bigger than all of us here.
How was it working with Hayden to kind of develop that mother-daughter bond? Because
Tyler, I got to tell you this. I was renovating a house in 1998, and the guy who was the contractor said, my daughter's an actress. I'd love for her to meet you. And I said, great. So he brought her over, and I just thought she was a bright ray of sunshine, but, child actor. You know what I mean? And every parent thinks their kid's great. And I just said what I always say, you can't be a stage parent. It's like if a kid wants to do something, if they really want to do it, they'll weather the storm because the industry will knock it out of you. But that was 1998. She was 10 years old. And then 2025, we're sitting down together in Providence doing the read through, and our chemistry was instantaneous, locked in from the minute we got together. We were totally devoted to this project. We'd go to the set and shoot, then come back to the hotel and run lines and pick everything apart, go through the script with a fine-tooth comb to really do what we know how to do as actors to make the roles complete and to make and she just brought so much emotion to her role. I think that's what carries the film. I'm doing press because I want people to see her performance.
that is a wild story. It seems like, this is meant to be then. If you guys had met that many decades before and before she was a star or anything, that's wild.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk about hauntings and ghosts in this film as well. Are you open to the supernatural, or how do you feel about that?
Do you know that I live in a famously haunted house?
I did not know that.
I live in a famously haunted house. I live in a house that I'm in my living room right now, but I live in a house that was kind of like the headquarters of that late 60s singer-songwriter movement because it was Cass Elliott's house, Mama Cass Elliott's house. And it had a really interesting provenance. It was built for Natalie Wood, then Cass Elliot lived here, then Ringo Starr lived here. And I bought it from Danny Aykroyd, who's really into paranormal stuff. And he was the one who said, this house is haunted by Cass Elliott's ghost. And so when I moved in, I always looked for those things. My daughter was convinced that there were ghosts here. I raised my kids here. Um, but I like to think that, but yeah, there are buses that come by. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Aykroyd, if anybody, would know. So I'll take his
Yeah.
word for it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always found it interesting how varied your love of the arts are. You were an illustrator at Hanna-Barbera. You sang with the Hawks and had an album deal. You're this great actress. I saw you mention that there weren't really hybrids of actors and recording artists back in the day. So
Um,
how hard was that decision to really commit to acting and kind of leave, singing on the wayside there?
well, you know what? It wasn't I'm not a careerist, so I never made active decisions in my creative life. I've always, and I continue, I have four films coming out this year. This is the first one, but I always look at what's in front of me and kind of balance the priorities of, family, personal health, career. And sometimes, one's at the top, one's in the middle, one's at the bottom. but my decisions about the work that I've done have always been based on, what's available and how does that fit into my whole life. So as far as like discarding singing, I would say that I actually just did a charity at the Rufus Wainwright's Christmas show for 3,000 people here in town. I did the Grand Ole Opry last year. But as far as singing as a career, it has more to do with what there was for me. And so I did record an album, but I didn't like it. I didn't want to release it. I'm such a dope. It's still better than anything. Well, anyway. Um, but you know, it wasn't a time to do like, as I sang in movies. I kind of sang my way into films really with the film of Hair and Coal Miner's Daughter, and I sang on soundtracks too. But th at that time, I'm talking like 83, I think, it wasn't the time for nobody could kind of get a singer actress because like if you're an actress, you don't have a set persona. If you're a singer, you have a set persona. Now they would call it branding. You know what I mean? But uh, it was more just like, and I was living in Europe, so I wasn't really involved with, Hollywood either. I was living in Europe when Vacation came out.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and everything worked out. And I love the vacation movies. My last question for you. Obviously, Chevy's been all over the news lately with his documentary coming out. You obviously have such a great connection with him. What would you say makes him truly special as a performer? Because your two just played off each other. Like the chemistry was unreal. Every movie was always so great.
Chemistry was there from the minute when I stand beside Chevy, he's Clark Griswold and I'm Ellen Griswold. There's just something, it doesn't happen with any other actors. But I'll tell you this, as far as I've done 5 films, 3 commercials, a pilot, and numerous autograph conventions with Chevy. I think arguably I've worked with him more than anybody. I know that as an actor I've worked with him more than any other actor, and I know that as an actor he's worked with me more than any other actor. But I still can't tell you why he says the things he says and does the things he does. But I love him.